This is a Lomi, specifically the Lomi Bloom model. And if you've never heard of Lomi before, it is a brand of electric composters. But to me, it doesn't really create true traditional compost. It's more of a pre compost, but we'll get into that a little bit later. There's lots of concerns about electric composters in general, mainly being sustainability and the cost. So I will talk a little bit about those concerns. I'm also going to run you through a whole Lomi cycle and give my honest thoughts and opinions about electric composters and talk about who this might benefit and who it might not benefit so much.
Here it is in its full glory. This is the sage green color, and I've ran a few cycles of my Lomi before, so I didn't clean it out fully since the last time I used it, but this is what the inside looks like, and this is where you'll put your food scraps. There are two filters. Here is one, and this is just activated charcoal. Then the second filter is on the back of the unit, and this one is kind of a pain to open and close, so I'm not going to open it right now, but you put more charcoal in this filter. To run your Lomi, you'll want to use these compost accelerator tabs. This will help break the food scraps down more. And here are the filter refills, which is the activated charcoal, and they say to replace your charcoal every 45 cycles, and there are 45 compost accelerator tablets. So basically, when you run out of those tablets, it's also time to change out the charcoal in the filters. Here is a list of all of the things you can put into your Lomi. Some things should only be added sparingly, but you can put a lot of things in. And as for the list of things you can't add, everything that I'm saying pretty much makes sense. Something hard like an avocado pit could damage the blades, and too much liquid would make the contents sludgy. The only thing that doesn't make sense is specifically the cooked potatoes, but I guess they have their reasons, so I will have to try to remember that. I've got a bowl of food scraps, and it can take compostable bags, and while they do break down in traditional compost eventually, it takes a little bit of time to do that, so it will be interesting to see what Lomi does with it. I also found this half jar of sauerkraut hiding in the back of my fridge that expired back in 2020, so I am putting that in here as well. I've got a compost accelerator tablet ready to go, and you put it inside the bucket on top of your food scraps, and you are supposed to add a little bit of water onto that tablet. And then you put the lid back on. And the lid is a little tricky. It might just be my own user error. There are arrows inside to help you align the lid, but it has to be aligned perfectly, so it was a little frustrating to get on at first. And even after using it a couple of times, it's still a little tricky. There we go. Okay, I finally got it. To start, you simply press the button. I am doing an Eco Express mode. While it's running, this is what it sounds like. So it is a little loud, but not so loud that I think it would annoy me, but you can definitely hear it. You can see the food scraps being mixed up, and in terms of the smell, the food scraps are being heated up and mixed up in here. So it does have an odor even with the charcoal in the filters, but it's not a bad odor, but there is definitely an earthy smell. Honestly, it kind of smells like raisins, oddly enough to me. While the cycle is running, let's talk about the sustainability aspect and go into the cost a little bit. The cost for the unit with your first 45 compost accelerator tablets and charcoal for the filters on their website says $599, but I always feel like they always have it on sale. It's always discounted, and then there are usually coupon codes floating around, so currently their website says it's $499. So yeah, it's a big investment. The filter refills are $29.99 unless you want to subscribe and get them discounted a little more for $24.99 every 3 months. And it's the same cost for the compost accelerator tablets with the option of the subscription for every 3 months. However, I have heard of people sourcing their own activated charcoal for the filter refills, so as long as it's just plain activated charcoal, I can't imagine why it wouldn't work. Understandably, the cost alone could deter anyone from getting and using one of these devices. And is it even worth it? I am giving a spoiler alert before we see the finished product, but each cycle doesn't produce that much compost. And again, it's pre-compost, so you can't even treat it as regular compost. You could use it as a fertilizer for houseplants or even your outdoor plants, or if you have other compost systems, you can put it in there so it can continue breaking down. But traditional composting or even worm composting are all pretty easy to do at home if you've got the space. Some pros of using Lomi is that it's a way to keep food waste out of the landfill if you have no other options, and your city doesn't allow food scraps in green waste bins. Another pro is that you can make your own natural fertilizer. There are 3 different modes you can run. The Grow cycle uses about 1 kilowatt hour per cycle. The Eco Express mode uses 0.60 kilowatt hours per cycle, and the Lomi approved mode uses 0.75 kilowatt hours per cycle. And this is the mode that you want to choose if you're using bioplastics on, which now that I'm thinking about it, I should have used this mode for my current cycle because I did put in some home compostable bags, so it will be interesting to see what happens. Energy costs are rising, and if I had solar panels, I would probably want to use my Lomi more often, even though Lomi says that the energy usage is comparable to other home appliances. This cycle has run its course, and now we can take a look inside and see what was created. And it really does look like dirt or compost. It does smell pretty earthy, and even though I should have ran it on the Lomi approved mode, the compostable bag that I put in here does appear to be broken down quite a bit. And I am going to feed this batch to my worms. And I am just spreading it out in my worm bin, and it really does look very broken down. It's all unrecognizable, and the contents really did shrink down. So even though I filled the bucket up, it doesn't create that much volume of this pre-compost. So who can benefit from using Lomi? I think it's a very specific group of people. If you have space to compost outside or have chickens or other animals that could eat your food scraps, it's probably not going to be worth it. But for people who don't have other options and want to use the contents as a houseplant fertilizer, and if they also have low energy costs, it could be worth it, but fertilizer isn't that expensive to begin with.
So, yeah, Lomi isn't for everybody, but for people who live in apartment complexes and have no other options to keep their green waste out of the landfill, I think it can be a great option. For me, I'm not going to be using it all the time, but I will use it when I have a lot of excess food scraps. So I am very glad that I got to try this though and see how this works and what kind of compost or pre compost it creates firsthand.